So, after joyously feeding her little dog a few more strips of bacon, Rose got to the task of eating herself. She thought for certain, with as hungry as she was, that she'd no doubt tear her way through at least half of this 2-foot-long sub, no matter how big it was. And it was sizable, and the ingredients piled heavily. In no time at all, she had made her way halfway through that sub, at which point she expected to be full, only to find that she was still hungry. So she simply kept eating, before long devouring the entire 2-foot-long, very heavily stacked sub sandwich, down to the last crumb. And even then, knowing that she had eaten so much, she was still hungry. Wow, that must have really taken it out of me, she thought. I can't believe I still need to eat more, she said as she hopped off of the kitchen stool that she was sitting on to eat the sub sandwich on the island in the kitchen. She looked around the kitchen for some more food to eat, supposing that she would change things up a bit. And it was fully stocked, so finding more food wasn't an issue. "Okay, Fluff, I guess it's pig out time," Rose said, smiling down at the little dog. "We are going to have a blast, and it isn't going to dent my mom's grocery bill. This place is kept by the King of Atlantis, after all. I don't think he's hurting for money. So, sky's the limit, Fluff. We're eating it all." In no time at all, Rose had assembled an absolutely massive amount of food. Bags of potato chips, 3 to be exact, 4 cans of chicken noodle soup, a fresh-cut watermelon that was seedless, multiple sandwiches made in an assortment of ways, some that she stacked high with cheese and meat and toasted in the oven. She even remembered what her mother said and stepped outside for a short time to grow a plant to produce some of the nectar. She wanted to make sure that she got all the nutrition she needed. She had to remember that she wasn't taking that medication anymore, and not knowing what effects not having that kind of nutrition would mean, she wanted to cover all her bases and made a large amount of it. Several pitchers, in fact, bringing them inside and setting them on the counter, along with the wide assortment of food. She would occasionally toss small bits of ham or turkey, bacon, and other things down to the small dog, while continuing to eat herself. Rose got a big smile on her face. "Yeah, I think my eyes overloaded my stomach this time. There's no way I'm going to be able to eat all of this. But not my bill," Rose said, smiling, as she began to eat. At first, Rose was rather joyous, tearing through the food with a smile on her face, eating one thing after another carelessly, as if it were all one big vacation, a smorgasbord just for her. But as Rose ate her way through the food, she began to grow concerned. The more she ate, the faster she ate, the more she began to realize that she was still hungry. She continued to pack on the food, more of it and more of it, but it seemed like no matter how much she ate, she was still hungry. She was even drinking large amounts of the nectar that she collected from the plant, and still it didn't seem to be having any effect. With the amount of food that Rose was eating, she expected that she'd be the size of a balloon by now, and yet looking down at her stomach, she didn't appear to have put on any mass at all. There was no bulge in her stomach from eating. She didn't feel full, and the more she ate, the more she became worried. Eventually, she had eaten absolutely all of it. Everything that she had set on the counter. 4 bags of chips, 6 sandwiches, 4 cans of chicken noodle soup, an entire watermelon, and 3 pitchers of the nectar. All of it completely gone. And she was still hungry. In fact, she almost felt hungrier than when she started. No, she did feel hungrier than when she started. Suddenly, a feeling came over Rose as she stared back at the fridge, sitting on the stool, looking over her shoulder at it. And every moment she stared at it, it felt as if she got hungrier and hungrier with every second. In that instant, she hopped down from the stool, rushing over to the fridge, opening it wide, and without any hesitation, as if it was beyond her control, she simply started eating everything. She didn't bother preparing it or cooking it, combining ingredients, or making any sort of dish. She just started eating it directly out of the fridge. Entire blocks of cheese, containers of turkey and ham, entire heads of lettuce and tomatoes, not even cutting them, just eating them ravenously. Even the bacon, devouring it down without even cooking it. 3 packs of it, an entire container of uncooked hamburger meat, bottles of ranch dressing, ketchup and mustard. She just tore the lids off and drank them. Before long, she had eaten everything in the fridge, and without even thinking about it, moved on, beginning to spread every cabinet open, pulling down every food that she could possibly get her hands on, opening all the cans of food, every bag of chips, spaghetti and meatballs, chicken noodle soup, ravioli, beef stew, beef jerky, everything. She was eating absolutely everything, furiously eating her way through everything she could get her hands on, cracking every can open with the can opener. Containers of peanut butter and jelly, preserved fruits. Nothing was beyond her appetite. Before long, she had eaten almost every single article of food in the kitchen, narrowing it down to only a small assortment of cans. And finally, as her hand reached towards one of the cans, she finally felt full. She didn't want to eat anymore. Slowly, Rose pulled her hand back and suddenly felt as if her common sense had returned to her. As she started to look around, taking a step back as her foot tipped over an assortment of empty cans lying on the floor. As she looked around to see the entire kitchen covered in empty containers, cans and bags, bottles and jars scattered everywhere, as if she didn't care what happened to them once they were empty, and simply discarded them wherever she happened to be. She easily must have eaten enough food to feed a small army. Staring down at all of the empty containers, making a mess of this kitchen, Rose was suddenly stricken with a great deal of fear. Looking at herself, once again, she didn't seem to have increased in size, and yet it's clear from the amount of containers on the floor, the fridge still open and completely empty. She had eaten more than twice her body weight in food, without a single pound to show for it. Rose covered her mouth, staring out at this utter mess, fear filling her heart at that moment, as a few teardrops began to fall. "Mom," she said, stepping back towards the entryway to the cabin. "Mom," she shouted as she turned around, rushing out of the door, not even stopping to close it, simply running out into the woods as fast as she possibly could, heading back to the clearing, back to her mother. and terrified out of her wits.